What's going on, you guys? My name's Ty Knots and welcome to Top 5 Unknowns, 5 Hidden Family Secrets. Number 5. Diane Stott is a Missouri woman who seemingly had an awful string of bad luck around 2012. On Easter Sunday, Diane found that her father had passed away in bed after suffering from flu-like symptoms. Though just 5 months later, her son was suffering from the same fate, with her finding him on his bedroom floor, having also been struck with a sudden onset illness. Locals believe this to simply be a string of bad luck, though once again, the following June, Diane's other 24-year-old son also passed away after being hospitalized with flu-like symptoms. Finally, Diane's daughter, Sarah, was also admitted to the hospital for possibly having the flu, though this time doctors were able to determine that she'd been poisoned with antifreeze. All of the events were then linked back to Diane, who then revealed that her other daughter, Rachel, had been involved. It turns out that the two had gradually been poisoning their family members due to a growing resentment for them, a statement that was never fully elaborated on. Both women were sentenced to life in prison, with Rachel receiving 2 life sentences due to her extended involvement in the crimes.
A Springfield woman pled guilty and was sentenced today to poisoning and killing her husband and son over 3 years ago. Stephen Morgan is live in our studio tonight with the details.
Janelle, 53-year-old Diane Stott entered a guilty plea today and was sentenced to life in prison without the chance of parole. She admitted to poisoning her family members with antifreeze, resulting in the deaths of her husband and son and the hospitalization of one of her daughters. Today, that daughter had this to say.
She took away my lifestyle, and motherhood, and my independence.
Diane Stott standing as she listened to the judge deliver her sentence. Per the terms of the plea agreement, Stott will serve 3 life sentences in prison, one of which rules out the possibility of parole.
She didn't like her husband. She felt that it was difficult caring for her autistic adult son, and she didn't like that her daughter had graduated from college and didn't have a job and wasn't supporting herself. According
to Patterson, Diane and her daughter Rachel poisoned 3 of their family members. Mark, the husband and father, dying in April of 2012. Diane's son Sean dying in September of the same year. Sarah was hospitalized in June of 2013 after she too was poisoned.
I forgive my mom for what she did to me.
And as for Rachel, the sister who allegedly assisted in the poisoning, will too be convicted later this year.
Under the plea agreement, she's to receive life sentences on the murder counts and 20 years on the assault count to run consecutively.
Number 4. Back in 1983, a dentist by the name of Colin Hall married his first wife, Leslie, with the two eventually raising 4 young children. They lived a happy, quiet life until Colin met a young woman named Hazel Stewart, who was also married. The two then began to have an affair after realizing that they had much in common, though this bond grew much darker and stronger when the two realized a very specific common interest: the desire to take the lives of their families. Eventually, the two devised a plan to poison their spouses with carbon monoxide. Colin succeeded in taking his wife's life, then helped Hazel take out her husband as well. The bodies were then propped up in a garage in a manner that seemed consistent with the two having taken their own lives, allowing Colin and Hazel to continue on without any sort of police interference. Though before long, the two broke up. Colin eventually remarried and began life as a new man. Though in 1998, he could remain silent no longer and confessed his crimes to his new wife. He planned on turning himself in, though his wife wouldn't allow it, fearing for the life of their children if their father were to be sent to prison. Eventually, 10 years later, Colin was unable to continue on this way. He began destructive habits, including spending his life savings, cheating on his wife, and having sexual relations with sleeping dental patients. He then turned himself and Hazel in, resulting in Colin receiving 21 years in prison and Hazel receiving 18. Number 3. In 2002, Robert Hale, more commonly known as Papa Pilgrim, made a political statement of a lifetime. After the government had issued a law allowing drivers to use portions of government-owned land where roads used to be located, Robert decided he would take a bulldozer and drive it 13 miles through a national forest. This act gained him nationwide notoriety and certainly brought the necessary attention to the issues at hand. though no one would have ever guessed the true man that Robert was. On television and in interviews, he was displayed as an old-fashioned, hippie-esque grandfather. In fact, all of his 15 children were given biblical names, with him working hard to teach them how to live off the land rather than depending on corporations or governments to provide. Though it was soon found out that Robert had a darker side. He would also callously whip his children if they did wrong, and even bind and gag them with a dirty cloth if they screamed. He also began having sexual relations with his underage daughter, convincing her that the Bible permitted it. It wasn't until the children were introduced to the outside world that they realized what their father had been putting them through, and decided to ask for help. The assistance came in 2005 when one of Robert's older daughters fled the home in search of police. They then showed up at his home, arrested him, and took the children to safety. Robert never once apologized for his actions, and in fact, he maintained that he was a righteous man until he passed away in prison in 2008.
Our family lived a two-secret life. On the outside, we looked quaint and could be quite charming when it suited us. But behind closed doors, a battle was always raging.
You took for yourself the very things that I held so dear. You knew I wanted so badly to be pure.
I knew I looked very tough on the outside, even though you cannot see it. I am very soft on the inside. I have feelings and am hurt inside because of the things you did.
I did not know when I was a little girl that you did not act properly with us girls. You always told us everything you did was proper. I know now that it was not proper for you to sleep with me and hold me close without your pants on. It makes me sad that you did these kind of things. I hope you will ask Jesus to forgive you. I have asked him to forgive me, and he did. We all pray for you, love you, and are sorry that you had to go to prison. I am not sorry that you are in prison because I am very afraid of you.
Number 2. A man by the name of Darren West had spent the last 10 years of his life with his wife, believing that the two had only ever conceived 3 children. Eventually, Darren was sent to prison on drug-related charges, but when he was released, he made the discovery of a lifetime. In Megan's garage, he found the body of an infant who had clearly passed away some time ago, though this wasn't the only one. In searching, it was revealed that there were 7 deceased infants in total, all of which had been born during Darren and Megan's time together between 1996 and 2006. When confronted by police, Megan admitted to choking each of these children after birth, aside from one who was a stillborn. Her reasoning behind this was that she was addicted to drugs and knew that she'd be unable to take care of the children. She truly believed that she was doing what was right by taking the lives of these 6 kids. Strangely, her family even backed her up on this decision, though the court system wasn't quite so forgiving. Megan was sentenced to 6 life terms in prison.
She said that she had the baby, she would hold it for a short time. She said that none of the babies were alive more than a minute or 2. And then she said that she used her thumbs and she described what she would just show me like this.
She was just about to leave. She ran out the door and then stopped and came back. She gave me a hug and said, "I love you." Hours later, she was arrested. The news of what had happened redefined the word blindsided for me. She was the Megan that I had always known. I had had a year to come to terms with what has happened in Megan's life. I had looked for some kind of silver lining around it. No one would have ever guessed this shy, timid girl was capable of this. The person I know is not the same girl that the media is portraying her to be.
Therefore, I do think that it's appropriate that 3 of the charges run consecutively in this manner, and they can run concurrent with the other charges.
Court in recess.
Number 1. Alice and Gerald Odin were known by many as being a quiet, loving, church-going couple. They'd lived the majority of their lives together, though they'd each been married once before. As it would turn out, Alice was married to a man named Ronald Holtz. The two were together for about 6 years until they filed for divorce. Though after the paperwork was filed, Ronald was nowhere to be found. In fact, he was never seen again, and Alice was awarded her divorce by default. Gerald was in a shockingly similar situation as well. He also wanted to leave his wife and the 2 children, though rather than file for divorce, he shot his wife with his 2 sons going missing immediately afterward. Years later, Alice and Gerald met and began a life together. They got married, had children, and settled down in a small town. However, seemingly out of nowhere and countless years later, Allison's son came from the woodwork and turned her in to police, telling the story of how she'd shot her husband and hidden his body in a gold mine. Though Alice told a very compelling story of how her husband was allegedly attempting to attack their daughter, so she shot him in defense. While the story was quite obviously not true, there simply wasn't enough evidence to prove otherwise, and Alice was sent to prison for manslaughter. Gerald, on the other hand, decided to turn himself in and is expected to face life in prison.
Well, Robin, it sounds like something out of a Hollywood movie script. An idyllic childhood in a small farming community in Missouri. But for one girl now all grown up, her church-going, seemingly typical American family hid some deadly secrets about mom and dad. This morning, those memories are now in question after her mother and stepfather, now in their 70s, were both arrested in September for separate murders more than 30 years ago. Gerald Odin charged with shooting his ex-wife and her 2 children back in 1980 in Wyoming. In 1975, Alice Odin allegedly killed her ex-husband, whose remains were found inside an abandoned mine. The cause of death? A gunshot wound to the back of his head. Now in a new interview in next week's People magazine, Hayes recalls the day she says the man who raised her since she was 4 admitted to her that he was a murderer.
She said that he asked her, what difference would it make if you knew? And she said if she knew, it would give her peace, and that he finally confessed to her.
Odin pleaded guilty and was sentenced to life in prison in November. In his confession, he said he killed his ex-wife because she was trying to ruin his new relationship with Alice.
Erica told us that despite everything that happened, her stepfather gave her the most beautiful life that he possibly could.
Although her stepfather's past was a complete shock, Erica says she always had a feeling her mother wasn't telling her something. Her mother eventually telling her the dark secret. She killed Holtz, but only because he was abusive and threatened to kill them both. Alice Odin has pleaded not guilty to first-degree murder charges and is awaiting trial, while Erica is left to make sense of a childhood now tainted.
She told us that she sees this as a warped love story, one where her mother killed to protect herself and her stepfather killed to be with her mother.
Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to click that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep updated with our videos.